Well, Doug Ford's early election is happening. We're going to tell you when to expect to head to the polls.
And we have reaction to the news from Bonnie Crombie to Merritt Stiles and GTA residents straight ahead.
Well, a shooting in a residential neighborhood sent a nearby school into hold insecure for most of the day. CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan has details from Mississauga.
This is Live at 5. Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Bakari Savage. So, Ontario voters will be heading to the polls next month.
And after months of speculation, Premier Doug Ford made it official today at a transit announcement in Brampton. He confirmed he will be calling an election on Wednesday. Election day is expected to be on February the 27th. Ford has repeatedly insisted that he needs a stronger mandate from taxpayers in order to fight looming U.S. tariffs.
We need a mandate from the people to fight against Donald Trump's tariffs, the attack he's coming against our families, our businesses, our communities. And with a strong mandate, we will be able to fight with Donald Trump to make sure we stop the tariffs and make sure that we give certainty to the people of Ontario. It may take investing tens of billions of dollars. We'll do tens of billions of dollars.
Well, opposition leaders and political strategists are reacting to the premier calling a snap election. Right now, let's bring in CP24's Melissa Duggan with more on what they're saying. Melissa.
Hey there, Bakari and Arda. Yeah, so this one is a big day in provincial politics here in Ontario. Premier Doug Ford, he already has a majority government, but apparently he doesn't think that's enough. Something also to note is that his party is ahead in the polls. And of course, Ford has been in front of cameras for weeks now, taking the lead when it comes to this fight against Donald Trump and his threats of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. So it looks like Ford parlaying that leadership position into an election looking to secure 4 more years as leader of this province. What we've been hearing from the opposition, though, today and in the lead up to today is that they don't want an election. They say that they have, that Ford has their support at this moment. But still, Ford says he needs the okay from Ontarians if he's going to inject billions of dollars into the provincial economy, something he says will be needed if we do see those tariffs take hold. Tariffs, he says, that could put 500,000 jobs in our province on the line. I want to share a little bit more of what we're hearing from the NDP and the Liberals. Have a listen.
We are going to the polls. Doug Ford has said we are. And so I'm going to be ready. And I'm ready to go now. And I'm running for Premier of Ontario. And we are running to replace Doug Ford and the Conservatives, because after 7 years of this guy, life has never been harder than it is today for Ontarians. And they deserve a better government that's more honest and that's going to actually bring back opportunity to the province of Ontario.
He needed to have a plan to prepare us to going into this new administration, and he didn't. He doesn't have relationships in the United States. He's suddenly running hundreds of $millions of ads in the United States. He hasn't invested in different sectors to create jobs. He hasn't protected jobs, quite frankly. He isn't prepared for this, and that's why he's calling an election to prepare you. He didn't get the job done for Ontarians, and I will.
And Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, he's adding to this as well, accusing Ford of putting profits and putting his job ahead of the jobs of the people of Ontario. Now, Bakari and Arda, the next month and a little bit going to come at us real fast. On Tuesday, that is when Ford is expected to ask the Lieutenant Governor to dissolve the government. Then on Wednesday, he's expected to make that call for an election official. And then February 1st, just a few days later, that's the date that Trump has kind of circled when we could hear more about those tariffs. And then February 27th, that's looking like that could be the day when Ontarians are going to be going to the ballot box to put their votes in. So a lot is going to happen, all just getting started today. Back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Melissa. And for more on how voters are reacting to the news, they will be heading to the polls for more than a year ahead of schedule. Let's go live to CP24's Sija Liu. Sija, we heard from the opposition. They don't like it. But what are you hearing from people?
Well, people are still trying to grasp the news right now. Some people didn't hear about it until we just told them. But overall, they only have a month or so until they decide who will be the Premier of Ontario. Now, when it comes to the campaign here, not a lot of time for candidates to convince voters. But we were asking voters what they thought. What are the issues that are most important to you? The number one thing that we heard was inflation and housing costs. And we know Premier Doug Ford, his focus lately has been a lot on the tariff threats. Most people that we've been speaking to did not mention this. They just said, we don't know who we're going to vote for, but we just want someone that will lower the cost of living. Take a listen to what some of the people we spoke to earlier today had to say.
I do think it should be called, I've never voted for Doug Ford before, but I feel in this case that he does have a point. I would like Ontario to be prepared to deal with the Trump administration and any tariffs that come our way.
Yeah, so tariffs are a huge issue here as well, but people will still have a few more weeks to decide on who they will vote for. And we'll be speaking to some more people throughout the evening, but we'll send it back to you for now.
Thank you so much for that, Sija. Michael Ford says it won't be running in the provincial election.
Yeah, Ford's the Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, although he stepped away from his duties in the fall to focus on his health. He announced today he will not be seeking re-election as the MPP for York Southwestern. Ford thanked his uncle, the Premier, for the opportunity to serve and said he's taking on a new chapter in his life.
Let's check on the commute home right now with CP24's traffic specialist, Adwa. Adwa, what do we need to know? I know you said it's pretty slow out there.
It is. And what you need to know is it's going to take you a while to get to where you need to be this afternoon. So if you're traveling on the 401, this is the 401 westbound. Brand new problems, westbound 401, just as you make your way through Avenue Road in the Collectors. Collision involving a transport. 2 left lanes are blocked. So already a slow go during rush hour, but very, very backed up now from the DVP. More so in the Express, even though the incident is in the Collectors. Don Valley Parkway's problem-free, still pretty busy as you approach Bayview Bloor to the 401, and a jam solid on the westbound Gardner, just as you try to get out of the downtown core. On city streets, just a heads up, crews remain on scene of a collision on Victoria Park right at O'Connor. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thanks a lot, Adj. Well, a massive police presence in a residential neighborhood near Credit View on the 403 in Mississauga. That's happening this evening as officers continue to negotiate with the shooting suspect.
Let's go live to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, for an update on this situation. What do we know so far in this? It's complicated.
Yeah, our police tell us that they received a call at 10 o'clock this morning in this subdivision regarding a neighbor dispute. And a 35-year-old man, I'm being told, was shot in the chest. He was eventually airlifted to a trauma center where he's been upgraded from critical to stable condition, which is good news. It is believed that the suspect is holed up in one of these houses here, and there's been a significant police presence throughout the day, a heavily armed police presence, I might add, and the tactical team is here as well. So they've been here trying to negotiate with this suspect for quite some time. The police have time on their side at this point in time. There is no hurry to get that man out of the house, and it's always safer if you have somebody come out of a house as opposed to you going in and breaching the door and trying to arrest somebody. So I would expect that people will take their time, and they'll take as much time as they need to convince this suspect to come out and surrender himself. We did hear from Peel Police earlier today as well, and here's some of that conversation. Let's have a listen.
While we're in the area, we're just asking anyone to please avoid the area if possible. If you are inside your residence and you don't have anywhere necessarily to go at this time, please stay inside your residence. If you do have video surveillance or any sort of footage, or if you were a witness from a window or anything like that, please contact our 11 Division Criminal Investigation Bureau, because anything will help us at this time.
There was a school as well that was put into a hold and secure, which basically means that the doors were locked and nobody comes into the school, nobody goes out of the school, and that's done as a precaution anytime there is a violent offense taking place in or around a school. And this large perimeter that's set up around here will continue to be set up until such time that the police can get this guy out of this house and make sure that the neighborhood is safe. Send it back to the desk.
Steve, thank you so much for that. It's now 5:09 and -7. This is Live at 5.
And coming up, we're going to tell you why Heinz Ketchup is taking issue with Prime Minister's ketchup comments. The province says that it plans to put the Brampton portion of the new Hazel-McCallion line underground. The LRT extension from the Brampton Gateway Terminal to downtown Brampton is about 4 kilometers long, and the province says it'll be tunneled. Premier Doug Ford says it'll help tens of thousands of riders connect seamlessly to transit every day. The next steps involve detailed planning and design of the Brampton and Mississauga extensions.
Mayor Olivia Chow is continuing to work to sell her budget before it's presented to City Council. Chow says the budget will improve the lives of Toronto renters. She says it will provide funding to hire 8 additional rent-safe TO bylaw officers who carry out building inspections. It will also put an extra $1 million into the Rent Bank program, which gives financial assistance to tenants who are behind on their or need help with a rental deposit.
Everyone deserves a home with heating, working stove, fridges, elevators, free from bugs and pests. And that's the least we can do at City Hall to make sure tenants, renters have a safe, clean, warm place to sleep at night.
The budget is set to go before Council on February 1st.
Well, comments that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made about Heinz Ketchup while discussing Canada's response to the U.S. tariffs. They appear to have left the company red in the face. For details, let's go to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Lindsay.
Right. So Kraft Heinz is saying that it is disappointed in these misleading comments by Justin Trudeau. So this was actually earlier in the week after the Prime Minister came out of a meeting with the premiers. He was talking about ways that Canada can kind of battle back against these proposed tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. And in that, he said we need to start focusing on buying more of what's actually produced in Canada. And then he used an example of something that happened in 2014 when Donald Trump was in power. Canadians switched and started buying a lot more of French's ketchups rather than Heinz because French was produced in Canada. And I guess Heinz didn't really like that very much, saying that it was misleading. But first of all, we'll just let you hear once again exactly what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said before we get to Heinz's response. Take a listen.
We will look, as we have in the past, at things that have replacements for Canadian consumers that wouldn't be tariffed. The example from last time was Heinz's ketchup being replaced by French's ketchup because French's was still using Canadian tomatoes in its ketchup. Having Canadian consumers have alternatives to having to spend tariffs on American inputs is part of how we make sure that we don't bear, or Canadians don't bear, undue costs around tariffs.
So Kraft Heinz is saying that this is misleading, Bakari and Arda, because while it did pull its production out of Leamington, Ontario back in 2014, it has since started production again in Montreal. It says that it employs Canadians. That ketchup is produced in Canada with Ontario-grown tomatoes, and that is why it is calling Justin Trudeau's comments misleading. Back to you.
All right, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya live from the newsroom. Lindsay, thank you. Well, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is set to meet with her new U.S. counterpart in Washington. That'll be next week. Joly says that she spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio by phone recently for about half an hour. She calls Rubio a good interlocutor and says that they've already had constructive discussions. Joly says Rubio understands U.S. tariffs would have an effect on Americans. And leaders of towns along the U.S. border, they have formed the Border Mayors Alliance, and the goal is to work together to protect their communities and the cross-border ties with the U.S., relationship that's highly integrated with many business owners having investments on both sides of the border. Well, Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins joined us live earlier this morning with more on what's at stake if these tariffs are imposed.
We are in jeopardy here. 25% tariffs would be catastrophic for our industry. And that is why we are coming together and forming the Border Mayors Alliance. It's mayors from cities across this country in border cities to say we need to make sure that we are linking arms, that it's a Canada first approach, and that we're going to link over to our mayors on the other side of the border and make sure that we're working in unison and harmony to share the story of what will happen if these tariffs come in place.
Well, Dilkins says that Canada and the USA have never faced such a profound threat to their shared economies.
The federal government is giving Canada Post a massive loan to help it with what is being described as significant financial challenges. The Crown Corporation says it will receive more than $1 billion in repayable funding through the current fiscal year. It says the money will help it continue operating, but it won't solve the structural issues. Canada Post says it has incurred significant annual losses since 2018. The government is calling the loan a financial bridge, saying the Postal Service would have fallen short of the necessary operating cash requirements this year. And the federal government is reviewing its dealings with Amazon after the company announced it was pulling out of Quebec. Amazon is shutting down all warehouses in Quebec and cutting more than 1,900 jobs. The company denies the move is linked to the unionization of workers at a Laval warehouse last year. Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne has sent a letter to Amazon CEO saying that its actions have prompted Ottawa to review its business relationship with the tech giant. And makers of the viral Canada is Not For Sale hat say that they've sold 50,000 of them since Premier Doug Ford wore it on TV. Ford wore the hat while speaking to reporters on January the 15th. With demand through the roof, the creators at Jack Pine Dynamic Branding say they are getting a crash course in manufacturing and realize how difficult it is to produce a ball cap that is fully made in Canada. The hats are so popular that many knockoffs have sprung up, and people are being warned that only hats bought on strongandfreehat.ca are legitimate.
Right now it's 5:17, holding at 7 below zero. This is Live at 5. 4 female Israeli soldiers will be the next hostages to be released. The latest on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire next.
Welcome back. There are now details about the second batch of Israeli hostages set to be released by Hamas this weekend.
There are 4 female soldiers, and in exchange, Israel is expected to release 200 Palestinian prisoners or detainees. That includes 120 militants serving life sentences after being convicted of deadly attacks. Well, dozens of Israeli hostages and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be freed under the terms of a ceasefire deal that also halts fighting in Gaza for at least 6 weeks.
The family members of Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza issued an appeal to U.S. President Donald Trump today, urging him to continue the diplomatic press to secure the release of all of their loved ones.
Dear President Trump, first of all, we want to say thank you for the happy moments we felt this week. But we want to tell you, we still have 94 hostages. We need them all at home. Please, do not stop.
In Gaza, Palestinians gathered at a heavily damaged mosque in the city of Han Yunis for prayers this morning. It was the first time Friday prayers were observed since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas took effect. And also, Israel says that it will take longer to withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon than what was agreed to in its ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. Well, Israel's prime minister's office says that the delay is because the agreement has not been fully enforced by Lebanon. Both Israel and Hezbollah were supposed to pull out of the area by Sunday and allow the Lebanese army and UN peacekeepers to provide security.
A fast-moving storm slammed into Ireland and northern parts of the UK today. Take a look. The storm delivered hurricane-force winds across the whole island of Ireland and central and southwest Scotland. Ireland saw wind gusts of 183 kilometers an hour, the strongest since the Second World War. More than 1 million customers in Ireland and Northern Ireland were without power, and a further 100,000 customers in Scotland. Schools were closed, and trains and ferries flights were all canceled.
It's 5:22, holding at 7 below zero. This is Live at 5, and also the weekend's here. So if you're looking for something to watch, we're going to take a look at new movie releases. That's next. Kendrick Lamar will perform alongside SZA during the Super Bowl halftime show this year.
What's up with it? Yeah, everything's smooth. I'm on the field right now. Yeah, you know, same old, keeping the body in motion. Getting that win up.
The guest appearance was announced alongside a flashy promo video for the event. Kendrick Lamar and SZA, they're longtime collaborators, and they're set to go on tour this summer. That's going to be together. As Super Bowl is just over a couple weeks away. It'll be in New Orleans at the Caesars Superdome.
Friday is here, and that means some new movies are hitting the screens this weekend, including the Mel Gibson-directed thriller Flight Risk.
Deputy Harris, hope you like flying. Beautiful day for it.
This movie stars Mark Wahlberg as a pilot who is transporting a U.S. Marshal and a key government witness from Alaska to Seattle. 99% of this movie takes place on that flight. Film critic Richard Krause says it's a straightforward, old-fashioned thriller with a little bit of human drama thrown in.
You will not be terribly surprised by anything much that happens here. The trailer gives away lots of the plot points here, but it does a pretty nice job of building tension anyway. The film's biggest secret is that it was directed by Mel Gibson. It doesn't say that in the trailers. You have to wait till the end credits of the film in the theater to discover that. Other than that, everything is pretty much laid out on the screen just as you might think it would be. So it's old-fashioned, but it's still got enough tension to make it worthwhile. So I gave Flight Risk, now playing in theaters, 3 out of 5 stars.
Cute. Do you just love getting to be home with them all the time? Yeah, I do. I love it.
Okay, so this is Night Bitch. It premiered at TIFF in the fall. It's a dark comedy horror film starring Amy Adams as a stay-at-home mom whose life takes a surreal turn. Now, Krause says it's a blend of rebellion, confusion, horror, and razor-sharp comic timing.
It is a story about female rage, about loneliness, but it's also filled with kind of sometimes weird and kind of gross and strange things that happen. But it is empowering, it's still empathetic, and it's really about the real-life job of parenting. So I gave Night Bitch, now in theaters, 3 out of 5 stars. Actually, it's not in theaters, I'm sorry. It is on Disney+.
You wonder where they are?
Steven Soderbergh's Presence is a new kind of ghost story told from the perspective of the ghost itself. It follows a dysfunctional family who moves into a 100-year-old house to find strange and mysterious things happening. Krause says it's quietly unnerving and that it values tension over outright scares.
Look at you. Fix your face. You're dealing with the public, handling people's food.
Stop. Please.
On you.
So this is Hard Truths. It stars prolific British actor Marianne Jean-Baptiste as a depressed, unlikable middle-aged woman trying to find her path in life. Krause says that the movie's empathetic lens and strong performances make the character, if not sympathetic, then at least understandable. He gives the movie 3.5 stars.
It's 5:28 and -7. This is Live at 5.
And we're live near Credit View and the 403. This is in Mississauga, where there continues to be a massive police presence as officers negotiate with the shooting suspect.
A shooting in a residential neighborhood sends a nearby school into hold and secure for most of the day. CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan has the details from Mississauga.
Well, Doug Ford's early election is happening. We're going to tell you when to expect to head to the polls.
And we have reaction to the news from Bonnie Crombie and Marit Stiles and GTA residents straight ahead.
This is Live at 5.
Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Bakari Savage. A massive police presence in a residential neighborhood near Credit View and the 403 in Mississauga this evening as officers continue to negotiate with the shooting suspect.
Let's go live to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan for an update on this situation. Steve, what happened here?
Well, Peel Police responded to a radio call just over 10 o'clock this morning, mind you. And I'm told it was a neighbor dispute. And when they arrived on scene, they found a man in his mid-30s. He was shot in the chest. He was airlifted to a trauma center where his condition has been upgraded from life-threatening to stable, which is very good news. Now, I am told that the neighbor went back into a home in this neighborhood, and that's where the police have been made trying to get contact with this guy and have him come out of that house safely. There is no word yet whether or not a weapon has been seized, which is concerning for the police, of course. So the best practice for them would be to take their time and try to convince this suspect to come out of the house on his own, and that way you are minimizing the risk to damage. If the police have to go inside, of course, that's more dangerous because you don't have the same control as you do if somebody's coming out of the house. So the police will take their time and try to get this man out of the house so he can be placed under arrest. There's a large perimeter set up around here, and clearly that's because they don't want any cars driving by this house where a man is holed up who is believed to have a gun with him. Here is more from Peel Police and from a neighbor who we spoke with earlier on. Let's listen to both.
We're not considering this a barricaded person just as of yet. We're just trying to make contact at this point, but we are considering them armed. So we want to take every necessary precaution to keep the rest of the residents in the area safe.
This neighborhood's pretty quiet. It's very peaceful. All our neighbors are awesome. We've never experienced this shooting here before.
It's a little nerve-wracking knowing that it was so close to home. I'm hoping that, people are okay, but it is scary that it was literally across the street.
So police have time on their side. They will take their time, of course, to make every effort to have this man come out on his own accord so they can keep control of him and make sure that nobody else is injured. And hopefully they can locate that gun as well. So I'll send it back to you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for keeping us updated, Steve Ryan, and we'll continue to follow this story very closely. Let's now head over to the roads. Let's check on the commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Adwa. Adwa, how's it looking? Slow, I know.
Yeah, painfully slow. But you know what? I finally have a little bit of good news. I'm not always the bearer of bad things. So if you're making your way out on the 401 westbound in the collectors through Avenue Road, MTL flipped their camera around. It's still pretty busy in the collectors. We had a collision. It was in the left lane on the approach to Avenue Road. Everything cleared, just cleared moments ago. But if you're making your way through, this is why you're running into a bit of a backlog. Rest of the 401 is really busy across the top of the city as we are into rush hour. Further east, you're looking at delays as you travel in towards the Durham stretch. And it remains pretty jammed on the Gardner as you make your way out of and head into the downtown core. The only good news is there's no live lane problems. On city streets, just a reminder, crews remain on scene of a collision blocking lanes on Victoria Park, right at O'Connor. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thanks a lot, Adj. Well, Ontario voters are going to be heading to the polls next month. After months of speculation, Premier Doug Ford made it official today. This was during an announcement for transit in Brampton. He confirmed that he will be calling an election Wednesday. Election day is expected to be February 27th. Ford has repeatedly insisted that he needs a stronger mandate from taxpayers in order to fight looming U.S. tariffs.
The decisions the people make in the next 30 days will affect themselves, their children, and their grandchildren for the next 20 to 25 years. If you could just imagine this, folks. Imagine Bonnie Crombie or Merritt Stiles sitting across from President Trump negotiating a deal. It would be an absolute disaster. And God help us if that ever happens.
Opposition leaders and political strategists are reacting to the premier calling snap elections. Let's bring in CP24's Melissa Duggan with more on what they're saying. And Melissa, as you said, a lot is happening with this province in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Doug Ford also saying today that he was fired up. You could really hear it in his voice there. Leading up to today, his message has been stay tuned. And this morning, the big unveil, the premier confirming that he will be triggering a snap election. And this has probably been the worst kept political secret in our province for quite some time. There's been speculation for months that we could be seeing an early election. It's June 2026, by the way, is when the next provincial election was previously scheduled. Now we're looking at February 27th, when the people of Ontario will be going to the polls. Opinion polls, by the way, showing that Ford and his progressive Conservatives have a clear lead over his competition. But, we have been speculating for quite some time that this could happen, so you can expect that the opposition parties are ready to go. Some of the messages we've been hearing from them, including from Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, him saying today that Ford puts his job and puts profits before the people of Ontario. As for the heads of the Liberal Party and the NDP, here's what they have to say.
This is an unnecessary election that's going to cost taxpayers $175 million. It is a reckless decision. It is a time where, tariffs are a threat, not an excuse to call an unnecessary and expensive election. You don't see any other premier in any other province calling an election at this time. We see a firm hand on the wheel.
In my experience, you don't start negotiating with yourselves. And I think that's what's happening right now. And I see that with Danielle Smith, but I also see it with Doug Ford. A lot of the proposals he's been throwing around seem to be made up on the back of a napkin. I want to see a strong, united front. And I want to see us not giving everything away before we even get to the bargaining table. We have to be in there protecting every single worker, every single sector. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I have a lot of experience, as I said, negotiating great terms for Ontario workers.
Expect Ford in the coming days to be selling this idea of why he thinks an early election should be called to win voters over. We've been hearing the word mandate from him an awful lot in recent weeks. He says that he needs it in order to fight this threat of tariffs coming from the new U.S. President, Donald Trump, that 25% tariff that he has threatened for quite some time now. Ford says that some 500,000 jobs in Ontario could be lost if these tariffs are put into effect. And he says that he needs the green light from the people of Ontario to be able to inject billions of dollars into the province's economy. But as we've been hearing from the opposition, they say they were prepared to support Ford in his call to inject more money if that's what is needed at this time. They say that election is not needed, but obviously Ford thinking differently, hoping to ride these opinion polls that are in his favor right now into his next election win. So we are going to be seeing what looks like a rare winter election in our province and expect to hear more from Ford and his party tomorrow. That's because he's called a day of super caucus. What that means is that people from his party, campaign managers and the like are all going to be gathering at a hotel near the airport, working on their plan, their strategy to win another majority government. That is their intention anyway. So for now, we're going to throw things back to you, Bakari and Arda.
And of course, we'll be covering that as well. Thank you so much to bring this to us, Melissa.
Thanks.
Okay, so what are voters thinking? How are they reacting to the news that they're going to be heading to the polls more than a year ahead of schedule? For that, let's go live to CP24, Sija Liu. Sija.
Hey there. Well, it seems like people we have been speaking to have mixed reaction about this. No complaints when it comes to the weather, though, because we were supposed to head to the polls in June of 2026, and now we are heading to the polls next month in the middle of winter. People didn't have anything to say about that, but they do have something to say about the early election. Some people we spoke to say it is unnecessary. They think it is a waste of money. It is expected to cost over $160 million. But many of the other people we've been speaking to say Ford has really been on their radar, especially the last month or so, how vocal he's been about the tariff threats. He's been on the major networks. He's been wearing T-shirts, hats, making his way on the news and on social media. And they say they appreciate that he is fighting for Canada so hard, no matter if they agree with his politics or not. As for other issues top of mind besides the tariff threats, the main things we're hearing from people are inflation, housing, and support for mental health. Take a listen to what people on the streets had to say today about Ford's decision to call an early election.
It's strategic.
What do you
He's smart. He knows. He wants to get there ahead of the Liberals. And I think he wants to make sure, too, one of the things is in Ontario, we always have either a red federally and a blue provincially. We never have both blue and blue, federal and provincial. Anyway, he's a politician. What can you expect?
I think it's a waste of taxpayers' money, seriously. I think it's a ploy, and anyway, I'm not a fan of Doug Ford, so I won't go on too much.
a lot of mixed reaction there, but many people we're speaking to don't have their minds made up. So when it comes to candidates and campaign managers, like Melissa mentioned, they'll be busy this weekend at a caucus meeting, coming up with the strategy. And when it comes to people, they can expect some phone calls, door knocking, so that's what politicians do when they are trying to win your vote. A lot more of that coming up in the next month or so. Back to you.
All right, the voice of the people, CP24, C. DeLue, thanks a lot.
It's now 5:41 and -7. This is Live at 5.
And coming up, we're going to tell you why Heinz is taking issue with Prime Minister's Ketchup comments. That's next.
Welcome back. Comments Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made about Heinz Ketchup while discussing Canada's response to the threat of U.S. tariffs appear to have left the company red in the face. For those details, let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. What happened here?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a story, Arda and Bakari, because this started a couple of days ago when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was coming out of a meeting with the premiers, and he was talking about ways that we can combat those tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to make against Canada, those 25% tariffs. And he was saying that Canadians really need to focus on buying things that are made in Canada, Canadian products. And he had an example of something that happened in 2014, back when Heinz Ketchup had actually pulled its plant out of Ontario and was no longer a made in Canada product. And he said that Canadians were buying more of French's ketchup rather than Heinz because French's was made in Canada. Here's more on what the Prime Minister said.
We will look, as we have in the past, at things that have replacements for Canadian consumers that wouldn't be tariffed. The example from last time was Heinz's ketchup being replaced by French's ketchup because French's was still using Canadian tomatoes in its ketchup. Having Canadian consumers have alternatives to having to spend tariffs on American inputs is part of how we make sure that we don't bear, or Canadians don't bear, undue costs around tariffs.
So Kraft Heinz not happy with those comments from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, once again calling them misleading, saying that, yes, it actually did pull out of its Leamington, Ontario plant back in 2014, but there was such backlash from the public for doing so that it has since started producing its ketchup once again, this time in Montreal. It says it employs thousands of Canadians, and all that ketchup is made from Ontario-grown tomatoes. So a little bit of a back and forth there, Arda and Bakari. Once again, as everyone's really waiting for these tariffs to come into place from the U.S. Again, that date is February 1st, and it seems as though everyone's a little nervous at this point. Back to you.
That date just keeps getting closer and closer. Thank you so much for that, Lindsay.
Well, the federal government is giving Canada Post a massive loan to help it with what are being described as significant financial challenges. The Crown Corporation says it'll receive more than $1 billion in repayable funding through the current fiscal year. It says that the money will help it continue operating, but will not solve structural issues. Canada Post says it has incurred significant annual losses since 2018. The government is calling the loan a financial bridge, saying that the Postal Service would have fallen short of necessary operating cash requirements this year.
5:46 and -7. This is Live at 5.
And 4 female Israeli soldiers will be the next hostages to be released. The latest on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Next.
Welcome back. There are now details about the second batch of Israeli hostages set to be released by Hamas this weekend. The 4 are female soldiers, and in exchange, Israel is expected to release 200 Palestinian prisoners or detainees. That includes 120 militants serving life sentences after being convicted of deadly attacks. Dozens of Israeli hostages and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be freed under the terms of a ceasefire deal that also halts fighting in Gaza for at least 6 weeks.
Well, the family members of Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza issued an appeal to U.S. President Donald Trump today, urging him to continue the diplomatic press to secure the release of all of their loved ones.
I want to say something to President Trump. If he listen and should listen to this, if you want to bring the United States great again, please rectify this ceasefire. It was on your behalf. It was your responsibility.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, Palestinians gathered at a heavily damaged mosque in the city of Khan Yunis for prayers this morning. It was the first time Friday prayers were observed since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas took effect. And Israel says it will take longer to withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon than what was agreed to in its ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. Israel's prime minister's office says the delay is because the agreement hasn't been fully enforced by Lebanon. Both Israel and Hezbollah were supposed to pull out of the area by Sunday and allow the Lebanese army and UN peacekeepers to provide security.
Well, now it's 5:51, holding at 7 below, but feeling more like 15 below outside. This is Live at 5.
The Year of the Snake begins on Wednesday. Coming up, we'll take a look at how Toronto is marking Lunar New Year. Welcome back. Lunar New Year is coming up, and Toronto is marking it this weekend. For more, we are joined by Blur Wu. He is the chairman of the Toronto Spring Festival, and he comes to us from Nathan Phillips Square, where it's all being set up. Thank you, Blur, for being here with us. Tell us, what can we expect tomorrow?
Oh, hi. I'm on the Nathan Phillips Square, and we're setting up the venue for the event for tomorrow, to celebrate the Lunar New Year.
Okay, so Blur, this is the Year of the Snake. Tell us all about that and how the decorations and setup down there at Nathan Phillips Square will embody that.
Oh, yes. The Year of the Snake, represent, it's a special meaning, represent the wisdom, flexible, and reborn. So we have, we have a lot of activity. And we also have, arch or anything that have the symbol of the snake. So that will be very exciting.
So what kind of stuff is going to happen tomorrow? There's an ice show, I understand?
Oh, yes. So we will have the ice shows on the ice ring. So Toronto U Kids, the skating club, will have very excellent shows on the ice ring. There's 2 shows at 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. The 2 shows.
Okay, and Blair, there's going to be a fireworks show, the first one ever, right?
Oh, yes. I want to, this is first time in the Toronto City Hall. Then we have the fireworks show to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Because for the fireworks show for the Lunar New Year, usually it's a traditional, like in China, it's like a many years. So, but for here, this is the first time that we had the fireworks show for the Lunar New Year. So we really excited about this.
There are little tents also behind you. Is that for the market?
Yeah, we do have. Of course, we have food and we have eco market. We also have which tree. So there are lots of very interesting activity, and we also have a large lucky draw. We have a lot of lucky draw here, thousands lucky draw. So I believe everybody will have fun here.
Hey, Blur, what are you most excited about?
Well, I think mostly it's the firework. I think still the main, right? I mean, fireworks. After the fireworks, we have line dance, and we also have God of Fortunes. Those were very excited. And on the stage, you can see the stage. So we have EDM party on the stage. So there will be Chinese style EDM, and also we have some shows on the stage too. Like the young people will have some Chinese traditional, very excellent dance on the stage too. So very good.
So it all ends at 10 p.m.
We also have some. So we also have some exciting I want to introduce is we also have the traditional Chinese clothes like hanfu. So you can experience and also we have the armory, like the ancient China soldiers armory on site too. So people can, it's a very interesting things can experience too.
Blur, thank you so much for this. So it ends at 10 p.m., starts at?
10 p.m. there will be the firework exactly sharp. The firework will start.
And what time does it begin?
At the beginning, we actually start at noon, from 12 p.m. The event already starts, so it continue to 10:30.
Thank you so much for this, Blur.
Blur Word, chairman of the Toronto Spring Festival. Thanks a lot. Well, Torontonia is looking to show off their wild side this Valentine's Day. Can dish the chocolate and roses and send their loved ones a spicy, Arda, it's an animal foot.
I don't know where this is going, and I don't like it.
The Toronto Zoo has launched its Only Pause campaign. Torontonians can donate $25.
Okay, I'm all for this now.
Yeah, $25 in exchange for...
Relax. It was the claw that scared me a little bit.
It's for a portrait, and the funds will go towards animal care, educational initiatives, and wildlife conservation.
Okay, I'm on board. A reminder, also, if you're going downtown, there's the TTC riders, there's a subway closure to keep in mind. There will be no service on Line 1 between Lawrence West and St. George on Saturday and Sunday while crews perform track work. Shuttle buses will be running between the stations instead.
Right now it is 5:59, holding at 7 below. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.